Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So it does help to realize there's no one here. Because sometimes people will carry the dukkha of the world and will lose sleep on it. We'll try to find ways to escape from it. And of course, one of those wonderful similes, it was fascinating. Some of the similes which I come up with, there was the old driverless bus simile. You know, that was one which when I included that in the Mindfulness Bliss and Beyond, and that was one the publishers over in the United States wanted to take out. They didn't understand it. You know, it's weird. That's one of the best similes, and they say, can't take that one out. Take everything else out if you wish, but leave that one there because that's one of the best. Now the old driverless bus. There you are, driving down the road in your vehicle, your 5 khandhas, and then you look out the window and there's just terrible scenery, and you just tell the bus driver, get out of here quickly, it shouldn't be like this, it shouldn't be so hot in this hall, you should have more cushions, and my upataks, all of you should take better care of me, and you just do this and do that, and wow, 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 wow. And all the time, I learned this a long time ago, you shout at the upataks, driving the bus in the front. You know what happens? It just goes, if it's terrible territory, it slows down and makes you more suffering, more torture. Ooh, why, you stupid driver? Even, you know that sometimes I was talking about when you go on retreat and you give your bowl to somebody else to fill up. Sometimes they forget. You're waiting in your hut and nothing comes. I thought somebody else was doing that. No, you said you were going to do it. Thank you very much. I didn't eat today. That's happened to me before. Oh, just the suffering of life. Oh, I always remember one of the gentlemen who came today, I don't mind saying it, was the mother of the gentleman who did this Sanghadana chanting. His mother came just when Ajahn Brahm and I, the only 2 monks in this monastery, and she said, I'll get you something special. She worked at like Pancake House or something. He said, I'm making some special pancakes today. Lots of them, so you don't have to cook anything else. That was bad advice. Because she came late. By the time she set things up, she could only make 1 pancake. And guess who got it? Not me. And she's about to do the second one. I said, look at the time. It's gone over the time. Anyway. Why me? And the answer is, why not? Somebody's been meditating too much. So anyway, I make up for it these days. But anyway, you're in the bus, and the bus is out of control. And you shout at the driver. Now, that bus driver, you think if anything is under your control, that is under your control, your will. The person who drives this, the person who makes this, the one who strives, the one who desires and aims. But of course, then, your will, your choice, never does what it's told. Even it really learns from some of the greatest teachers, Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Chah. You look in the sutras, the Buddha himself, and you just get all the information there. Right, you know what to do. Okay, bus driver, this is what you're supposed to do. Off you go. So just let go. What does the bus driver do? Attach. Just watch the breath. And what does the bus driver do? Watch his sexual fantasies. And then the bus driver says, stupid bus driver, stop doing that. Have you ever had that feeling the bus driver is just totally out of control? And sometimes you try. So you don't use force, you use skillful means, wisdom. So, okay, driver, the door of my heart's open to you, bus driver. You can do whatever you want. As long as it works and you get peaceful, okay. Oh, what else can you do, bus driver? Oh. And after a while, you get so fed up with this stupid bus driver that I try all these different skillful means. Just let go. Relax to the max, bus driver. And what does the bus driver do? It goes to sleep and crashes the whole bus. So after a while you think, this is one stupid bus driver, so you've got to find out where that bus driver... What is this bus driver? What is this will? The thing which I keep on saying is one of the two citadels of the self, like a citadel, like a fort, like the innermost sanctum where these two live, the will and the knower. And these two, you can't get close enough to actually to find out exactly what these things really are, so you can actually teach them a lesson. So, what one needs to do is actually to sneak up on that citadel of the will, to sneak up on the bus driver, so you go very quietly, so you hardly make a noise. So the bus driver is quite happily just driving the bus, looking at the movie on the TV, whatever they're doing, or listening to one of Ajahn Brahm's talks on his iPod, or whatever they're doing, or listening to one of Ajahn Brahm's sutta classes, let's make it fair, and moves up and sneaks up to find out that between those ears of the earplugs, there's no one there. Totally empty. No one is driving this bus. But then, how come the bus works? And this is actually one of the reasons why people have a hard time accepting non-self. But, well, who's giving this talk? Who's actually thinking? Who's actually worrying? Who's actually hurting? When no one gives you a cushion to sit on. There's hurt there, there's pain. But what actually is it? Well, this is where that instead of seeing a being there, we see this wonderful thing which we call like a process. And that process is defined, explained by dependent cessation and dependent origination. I like saying dependent cessation first, because that is the unmentioned twin of this process. It's just like, bhikkhunis never get a fair share. The monks, there's only one bhikkhuni here. Look at all these monks here. But, just like dependent origination, that gets all the attention. And its poor sister, dependent cessation, hardly gets mentioned. So I like that one. It's all cause and effect, and how the cause and effect, whole process, can stop and cease. How can anything ever cease? For those of you who are scientists, and there's a few in the back over there, and those scientists, there's one part of physics which is, pretty much sort of understood by everybody. That mass energy cannot be created or destroyed. So that the sum total of energy can go into mass and mass into energy, but the sum total of energy cannot be added to and cannot be subtracted from. It can transform from one form to another, but it's always constant. Even black holes, energy gets sucked in, but then, as my good old friend Bernard Carr would say, no, but there's Hawking radiation. The holes are actually white holes. They decay in time. A long time, but they decay. So, if there is a constant amount of stuff, what about your process, your body-mind, your energy? How can that ever be destroyed? How can that ever come to zero? And it's true, you cannot destroy anything. But if the sum total of mass energy in this universe happened to be zero, if it happened that all the negative energy, and there's lots of negative energy in many places in this world today. Well, I don't mean that type of negative energy. The negative energy, and if all the positive energy of this universe, it could suddenly come together. You could take the whole universe as we know it, with its dark matter and all the energy, and just squash it and bring it into one little point. Would it be intense energy? Would it be this incredibly much more powerful, the black hole of black holes where everything gets sucked in and this? No, it'll cancel out. You'll come to zero. Nothing left. And when I mentioned, I always remember this because I got an email. I get all the emails from CSIRO or RIO or something anyway. You know, the Australian research. I don't know why they send me these things. You know, the lead article today was the sex life of flies. I don't need to know that. You know, so the West Australian Institute of Physics, they still send me invitations to go here and go there. And I don't know. Anyway, so because that was, you know, sort of in my mind today, just seeing on emails, if everything comes together, there's nothing left. And it was because I used to spend a lot of time hanging out with people like Professor David Blair. He was a local physicist. And there's also another physicist, Mario, who was a Curtin head of physics over there. I'm not quite sure where he went to. But anyway, I haven't heard from him for a long while, Professor Mario. I think he sort of tripped into a black hole and just disappeared. That's supposed to be a joke. Anyway. Sorry. So anyway, when I was talking with him, I mentioned that possibility of this mass energy of this universe being a zero sum. Everything comes together and it gets to nothing. And he actually turned around, and I remember that moment. He said, yeah, good guess, because that's right. He said, omega equals 1. I don't know what omega means, but apparently it equals 1. Which means that everything balances. So it's a zero sum. Stuff. Not created, not destroyed. It emerges because one of the most fundamental laws of physics, Murphy's law, it emerges because it can. And anyway, that's part of quantum physics as well. If it can, it does. But anyway, but very rare. But anyway, so it only happens to me to happen once. So there you get the sum total of energy in this universe, stuff. Rupa Kanda is zero. Come from nothing and go back to nothing. Nothing left. And I like that idea, getting your head around it when I was at university, because it also means that this thing we call our will and our knower, our mental energy, those four khandhas, of Vedana and Sanya and Sankhara Vijnana, that stuff can all come together, ekagata, come into one peak and just disappear. That is cool. Nirodha Samapatti. Things vanish. Because people say, well, there must be something left. You can't destroy things. Exactly. It gets balanced and disappears. Cessation. With nothing left. Aparisesa parinibbana. I kind of like that, but some people say, oh, that's terrible. That's like a spiritual suicide. What do you want to do that for? It's because you realize what's happening, what's the truth. Likes and dislikes, what you expect, what you want, what you don't want. Those are called the first two hindrances, which block wisdom. Truth needs to be seen by courageous people. People who are willing to be shocked to the core, which is what happens when you get to the front of that bus and see there's no one sitting there. It's what happens when you see things which you were really attached to. And I don't mean just your friends and your loved ones, people you've known for such a long time, but things which are really deeply attached to. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will someday become separated from me. I'm talking about your khandhas. You take them to be mine. My body, we know that's going to be separated from you. What about your experience, your Vedana? Soon you won't be able to feel. It's separated from you. You go into deep meditation, much of Vedana, these sensations, these experiences, they're gone. Still remember, I was a Singaporean years and years and years ago, when I was just teaching like a meditation retreat, and they came up to me and they said, Ajahn Brahm, I've got to speak to you. It's important. It's urgent. I said, what happened? He said, I was meditating and I couldn't feel my hands. Oh, come on. There's more you're going to have to let go of. What happens when you can't feel, you can't hear anything, you can't smell anything, you can't feel anything. But to them that was really shocking. That their sense of connection to their body and their identity to their body and their, their, not delight, their cherishing of their body. The body was dear to them. And so when something disappeared, they couldn't feel it, they felt very, very scared. And this was, not sort of those terrible accidents which people have. This is actually where it was. Just other stuff was aware. It was just the mind was just disengaging. Things were disappearing and vanishing. And it was out of control. But this is what happens. See, it doesn't belong to you, this body. And Vedana doesn't belong to you. And perception. Where does that come from? Talking, with a few people over the last week about the Vipalasas, because they were asking, where is it in the suttas? It's only a couple of places, but it's embellished in Ajahn Brahm's books. Because I love those Vipalasas. It really explains so much. I mean, it's grounded in the suttas, easy enough. What it means is this is what the enlightened ones say is happiness. The non-Aryans say is suffering. Things like things disappearing, happiness. Cessation, bliss. But those who are not enlightened get scared out of their socks or something. I was going to say something else, but see something, they get really terrified of this. They're going to places they just don't understand and don't know. But that's really important for when people do meditate. They get tested, they get pushed. Accidentally, just don't know why, but they go to these places where, it's really peaceful, it's beautiful, but it's not like they've experienced happiness before. And so much of our life, when other people say that's so much suffering, you say, no, it's peaceful, it's happy. What other people say is suffering, you say is happiness. Letting go, having few possessions, not worrying about praise and blame. People say what a great monk you are, or they say what a stupid monk you are. Whichever way it goes, it just sometimes was sometimes it's wonderful if you act stupid, if you say the wrong things, if that people don't respect you, then you're much smarter than I am. You don't have to give talks. You can have a much more peaceful life. Do you agree with that? That's why I think that some of the most smart people on this in the Sangha, maybe they are much more advanced than I am, but they will never admit it, because if they do, they'll have to start a monastery in Frankfurt, Ajahn Chitta. Or in Vancouver. Or in Wollongong, Ajahn Nappy. You are Queensland, okay. Well, either will do anyway. But anyhow, I think you can understand that these vipalasas, they change your perception. Your perception, where do those perceptions come from? Why do you like this and not that? Why do you speak like this? Why do you prefer your happiness in one place and not another place? So that's one of the reasons why we challenge these things. And it's when your perceptions who don't belong to you, so who do they belong to? Where do my perceptions come from? Why is my perception that, there's certain foods I like? Because I grew up with those. Why do some people like vegetables? Must be because your previous life. No, I shouldn't say things like that. Why do I tell stupid jokes? As you grow up, you're conditioning. So that's defines your character. That defines. That's what causes this. So after a while, when you just see just all that stuff which you do, where does it come from? Where does this will come? You see, it's just cause and effect. And there's just your perceptions, your will itself. Where on earth does that come from? Giving so many examples, but every now and again, I do have the opportunity to listen to other monks give talks. Monks who sit in front of me and just see what they say. And I see them repeating my stories in the same way. Why do they do that? Because they've been brainwashed. Why have they been brainwashed? Do they really know what they're saying, that they're brainwashed? And I see myself repeating Ajahn Chah's stories. Where did that come from? Is it really that I make those choices and decisions? So often I challenge my will. And there are many things which have happened to me in my life where I've challenged these things, and it just doesn't matter how shocking they are, I want to find out why. And there was this one occasion many years ago, in one of the first years over in Dhammaloka Centre in Perth. And this was, in those days we had, the library was basically where the reception area is now. And the recordings of talks were on cassette tapes. And I was in the morning just waiting for something to happen. I forget what I was supposed to be doing. But it was a Saturday morning, I think, just waiting to go on arms round. And I knew the talk which I'd given the night before. And I saw that I'd given the same talk maybe 1 year ago. And I thought, I wonder how the talk has improved over the 12 months. And so I played it on one of these cassette tape recorders. And that was where you got the goosebumps come up. Because it wasn't just saying the same stories. It was actually saying the same words in the same order. Almost identical. And I really was of the opinion the night before I had freely chosen what word to say and which order to say them in, and how to compose a sentence about the same subject, but maybe using a few different prepositions or verbs or something. It's exactly the same. It was as if I was an automaton, that somebody had just turned me on and I'd given the talk. And that sort of shocked me because it really challenged my idea of being in control. And that's really freaky. So if you're not in control, what is in control? And that's why it's this cause and effect process, not a self, but there's dependent origination and cessation, causes and effects, from the delusion. That's why we think we're in control. That's why we will. And that creates all of this. So imagine you see through that, and then whatever you say, whatever you do, are you responsible for it? If you really understand this, then you'd never do anything which harms another person, because most of the harming just, comes, from a sense of ego and self, as I was mentioning earlier to someone about the beautiful phrase in the Ratana Sutta, which we chanted last week, to be contented and easily satisfied, not proud and demanding in nature. It's when we're proud, when we have conceit, when we have a sense of a self-identity, when we think there's somebody in here, that's when we start demanding and wanting things. It is from the sense of self, or the delusion of a self and me, that craving originates from. Wanting. Avijja paccaya sankhara. It's from that this craving comes. And of course, if there's no sense of self, there's nothing to do. Just do your duties. So what actually motivates you? What actually drives you if there's the sense of self disappears and craving vanishes? The only thing which drives you is the loving kindness, metta, or maybe karuna, mudita, upekkha, those Brahma viharas, which are selfless in a deep sense of the word. It keeps you going, which is one of the reasons why. I know that sometimes people argue with this, but I think this is a very true statement. If a person does become fully enlightened, an arahat, if there's no purpose to what they're doing, in other words, if they're not a monk or a nun and are a field of merit for other people, then they'll disappear. They will die. There's nothing to keep them going unless it's the purpose of loving kindness in a true way. If Brahma Sahampati had not asked the Buddha to actually to teach, to start getting the metta going, then he would have passed away into parinibbana, ceased, because it's that which drives this process. There's not a thing in there. This process of cause and effect is driven, the fuel, the upadana, which comes from the craving, which fuels just the next piece of existence, the next thing which you think of, you view as a continuation of the person who bears your name. From moment to moment, day to day, year to year, what keeps that going? And it is that sort of craving, based on the illusion that you are in control, that you are driving this. And we are so attached, cherish this sense of being, that to let it go is really scary. So how does dependent cessation happen? As I was just passing through the Kachanagota Sutta, which is one of my favourite suttas on non-self. It was only a short one, where it says you can't say there's nothing at all, because you're listening to this talk, there's things happening. It says there's things arising. But you can't say there is something, because it keeps on vanishing. It keeps on changing. Nothing is stable. It arises and then passes away almost immediately. This is the nature of stuff. There is nothing. If you look at it from one sense, nothing persisting. There is this rise and fall, this process which goes on and on and on. What, for want of a better simile, I call it it's like a process P. But there's no P there, it's just a process. This thing arises and another thing causes another thing to happen, which causes a nothing thing to happen, it causes another thing to happen. There's nothing in the beginning which is there in the end. It's this empty process. And what is that process? As it says there in the Kachanagota Sutta, the Buddha was telling this monk, all there is what arises, what passes away. It's just dukkha arising and dukkha passing away. Is that pretty negative? It's the truth. And if you realize that, then there's freedom. That I still have on my shrine in my office the photo of my teacher Ajahn Chah, my favourite photo of him, which was outside or in the back garden of the Hampstead Vihara when he went to visit there, when the monks first went to set up a monastery in UK. And there he is with his hands up in the air. And it was a photograph of a statue which exists to this day in Ajahn Buddhadasa's monastery of an enlightened monk with the caption, "Joy at last to know there's no happiness in the world." And I love that statue of Ajahn Chah with a huge smile on his face. And you think, how depressing that could be. So why are they smiling? Joy at last, and there's no happiness in this world. And then after a while you think, yeah, I suspected that. You've been searching for happiness all your life, many lives, thinking that there's something wrong with you, that you're not happy, or you just can't do it, or you're not up to it, or people have got it in for you, or it's other people's fault, or whatever it is, it's the government's fault, or whatever it is. If I could just fix this up, I could be happy. But here was a powerful statement that is just this rise and fall of these 5 khandhas, cause and effect, and they can never last long enough. If you do get happy, it will pass. And then what happens? And what happens is you discover that suffering, dukkha, this is just, on a small scale, that suffering is the space between 2 happy moments. And happiness is the space between 2 moments of suffering. When things are going well in your life, if they don't go as well as they went yesterday, that's suffering. We compare, we judge, we can't do anything about that because that's perception. That's what it does. And so after a while, we find that in our world, doesn't matter where you are, if you're in the best hut in this monastery, in the best body in this monastery, if you get the best upataks in this monastery, whatever you have, it will always be disappointing if you seek for happiness there. If you go to the best heaven realm after you die, still, it will never be perfect. There'll always be something changing, less perfect than it was last week. And sometimes I like history, because I've read articles of palaces 100 years ago. And those palaces, if I built one of those palaces here in Bodhinyana Monastery and just asked, does anyone want to stay in there? You say, no. It's cold, no heater, no gas, probably rainy, flies come in. There used to be sort of a palace many years ago. You look at an ordinary person's home in Perth, and that's far more comfortable. Not only that, but the homes in today, they get entertainment. It's called internet. Anything you want to see, any movie, any sport, any entertainment, you can just, at the click of a switch, just see. That's one of the reasons I gave a talk at Dhammaloka some years ago, when people were talking about the Pure Land, that if you chant Amitofo, that you will be able to go to the Pure Land. What are you talking about? Your Pure Land is here already. Look at this place, because what did it say at the Pure Land? That whatever food you want, you can get immediately. It's called Uber Eats. Delivered to your door. Whatever entertainment, you just click a finger or click the mouse, and there you have it. Whatever music, and it's called, what's the music app? I know the TV app is Netflix, isn't it? It's Spotify. Is that right? Yeah, Spotify. So the Pure Land is here. Whatever temperature you want, it's just here. But the one thing you can't do is stop Ajahn Brahm giving a talk. So maybe it's not the Pure Land. But anyway, you can actually get some understanding just of, is this good enough? Of course it's not. Because this is where these 5 khandhas, no matter how much you try and perfect them, they're by their very nature just imperfectible. Which is one of the reasons why, when we see things like that, joy at last, although there's no happiness in this world, we understand that all that craving, all that striving, all that wanting was unfaithful to you. Craving is unfaithful. It promises you happiness, fulfillment, ending of suffering, or at least no lessening of suffering. Does it ever deliver? All the chanting we do, all it does, at the very best, is put off suffering for a while. Relieve you from the burden for a while. But then what happens? Sometimes it gets back to square one again. All the doctors in this world, what can they do? They can lessen suffering, put off death. Eventually death will happen. No one ever gets cured. Just the disease, the illness gets alleviated, put off for a while, until that death happens. So after a while we start to look a bit more deeply into our condition. What is this thing which has to experience all this happiness and suffering? It is not so much the will, but the experiencer. And there we actually find just this experiencer, the knower, that is so much connected to this will. Shout at the driver of the bus, "Go fast, I'm in pain, get out of here. Slow down, am I having a good time? Half the retreat is almost over. Go so fast, stupid driver, please slow down so I can enjoy the rest of the retreat." But that's not to be gained or got by human beings. The driver just goes according to its own program, not yours. So what can we do? In that simile, the driverless bus, there's only one thing you can ever do, which is sit in your seat, go back, sit in your seat and stop complaining. No ill will, no shouting what you want. There's no one to deliver for you. If you understand that, then you have some peace in life. I've often noticed if I am achy, in pain, tired, the worst part of suffering is not the physical, it's the emotional. I don't want this, why me? And you find that that's exactly what the Buddha said to Nalaka Pita and Nalaka Mata. If the body is suffering, don't let the mind suffer. What that means is, if life is suffering, it doesn't go the way you want, the problem is not with life, the problem is what you want. Which is why we learn, after many sort of tears and groans and shouting and complaining, we learn how to let go of wanting. Welcome to life. These are the things which happen in life. People have accidents, people die, people get criticized, people get praised for the wrong reasons. We welcome to life, especially as a monk, as a Buddhist. We make peace with this. We make so much peace. This is life. It's not that someone's gone wrong, that someone needs to be blamed, that you need to be blamed. So our mind becomes at ease and at peace with things. Oh, I can't resist that story of that Zen monk, was it Hakuin? When some of the people here, I told this I think during the, about 6 months ago or something, when this Zen monk, he was a very good monk living up in the mountains somewhere, and that in the village which supported him, there was a young girl who got pregnant with her boyfriend. And, she loved her boyfriend, he was a scallywag, But nevertheless, she loved him, and when her father found out, and then she said, "Who's responsible for this?" And know that the boyfriend would really get sort of punished for this. So she thought quickly, and she thought, Hakuin, the old monk. Because you think, he's enlightened, he won't mind. He's compassionate. But it didn't work out the way she thought, because the villagers said, "That monk, we respected him, and he's a father of your child." So they went up to where he lived up in the mountains, and they harassed him, harangued him, and they were shouting. He never tried to defend himself. All he'd ever say was, "Aso." Jayako Aso. It finishes there. Okay, no more. And then give him a good sort of haranguing. And then when she gave birth, they thought, well, he's responsible, he'll look after her. The baby, that is. Because by that, so they took the baby up to the mountain and gave it to the monk to look after. I get really scared when somebody gives me a male baby to cut their hair. Because that's one of the things which monks, Theravada monks do. They give me their baby. The first haircut, the monk does it. And quite frankly, I can't get rid of the bub quickly enough. Come on. The hair's cut now, off you go. But imagine they give a baby to you and they go and you're left with it, literally holding the baby out. What would I do looking after a baby? This is a baby girl. This Zen monk had to look after this baby girl all by himself. So what did he say? So he didn't complain, couldn't do anything about it, so he found a way to look after this baby. It wasn't that long when the mum, of course the boyfriend, the real father, run away to the village, to the town, left her. And so she said to the father, it wasn't the monk, it was this young boy in the village, he's left now and he's got a bad reputation. I should have told you first of all, but I wanted to protect him. And so all the villagers, they went back up the mountain. And they said, we're terribly sorry. We shouldn't have done that. It was a bad karma what we did. And what did Hakuin say to them? He didn't say, you bad villagers, I told you I was innocent. You didn't trust me. Just, terrible villagers. I don't know why. He just said, so, and handed the baby back. And there's something quite beautiful about that. Just, you get criticised for things you didn't do, praised for things which you didn't do. And just what happens? So the Upataku didn't give me the cushion. What should you say? So it's not a big deal. So what that means is, again, when we don't see a person inside, who are you blaming? Who are you praising? It's one of the reasons why, again, when a person does let go of things, they've got no more sense of self. They are what is called as a stream winner. They will never say, who's a stream winner anyway? There's no one in there. There's no one on whom to hang the medal of a stream winner. There's no one there. They're just disappearing, vanishing. And as they see there's nobody in there, it's a sense of the view, the understanding, there's no one in there. That disappears first. My goodness, there's nobody in here. It's just cause and effect. Everything comes together, eventually just vanish like the universe. Poof, gone. Nothing there to begin with. It all comes together and it vanishes. Nothing left, no energy, no cosmic consciousness. Nothing. Because if there's cosmic consciousness, if there's anything left afterwards, anything consciousness knows something. So, okay, you've 5 candles disappeared. hang on, but I thought the five khandhas were all consciousness. Yeah, it's true. It's just, if there is something left, can't know anything, can't do anything, can't feel anything. It doesn't exist. What does existence mean? It has no senses. It doesn't know. It doesn't will. Because to have that, you need some khandha somewhere. It's gone. Gone at peace at last. There's nothing there to begin with. So there's nothing remaining. Oh, what joy. Peace at last. So, but what's the point of all this? The point of all this is when you realize that, at least you've got some sniff of that. It means that whatever you sit, who's doing anything? Not me. It is just the past karma, the ripples from the past, the echoes are all that is making this mind move. And when those echoes slow down and stop, the mind stops. Peace, deep meditation. You don't try to get into deep meditation. That's just more shouting at the bus driver. It's more agitation, more wanting. I often think of people, so many people, they want nimittas, they want jhanas. Do you really know what you want? What is this jhanas that people try and aspire to and make a goal? I'm going to achieve a jhana in just this retreat. Achieve a what? Well, if you wanted a banana, at least you know what a banana was. But jhana? I want to be a stream winner by the end of this retreat. Well, what is a stream winner? Do you know what? It's like getting in a bus or getting in your car and not knowing the destination. And it's not on GPS. No, a stream winner. You can't put in STREAM and just get directions. Because it's not to be gained through travelling. It's to be experienced through stopping. A totally different ball game. So what happens is, after a while of searching for nibbana here, searching for jhana there, and just, monks like me say how wonderful it is, and you say, oh yeah, I want some of that, and you travel here, you travel there, and you get to the jhana shop and it's closed, and you get to the nibbana website and it's out of order or just temporarily closed for upgrades or whatever, I'm not sure. It's crashed because too many people have logged in. Or whatever, I don't know. I make this up, I'm not really good at this internet stuff. But anyway. So after a while, you get so frustrated. It doesn't work. How do I do this? Again, where there's an I, there's a doer. Where there's a doer, there's an I. The two of them go together. Self and the self manifesting itself. A few of you have started to talk about that. That, when the self starts to get challenged, and there's nothing, you can't see anyone, and that's when you really start doing something. It freaks you out. So you just do something, anything, just to prove that you are, or you think you are, to go back to normal service. But when you start to vanish, things become very still, and you can't do anything. That's really freaky. That's brilliant. I always say that's first jhana, yeah, but second jhana, that is where you really sort of get so still. And, should be freaked out, but there's nothing to do. You can't move. So, the idea of being freaked out, yeah, it's sort of freaked out, but, not in the usual sense of the term. Because you can't sort of writhe and wriggle and say, I don't want to be here, because you're too frozen. You're absolutely still. You can't do anything. And that is so cool. so peaceful. Oh yeah, give me more of this. When I can't do anything at all, not if I want to. And this is actually how these insights really take off. It's a joy at last, to know there's no do-it in the world, no suffering, nothing really moves. That was all just stupidity, avijja, delusion, chasing its own tail. But the joy of this, the peace, that is one of the reasons why the main cause for freedom, for seeing non-self, is to understand that all these five khandhas are suffering arising, suffering passing away. And so when these five khandhas get, softened, they get calmed down, when they get very weak, it gets very happy. And suddenly just the way that your mind works inclines towards peace, towards happiness, inclines towards shutting down, real peace. And that's when you get the delicious happinesses. Delicious happiness is born of things disappearing. In the first jhana, vivekaja piti sukha, born of being apart from the five senses. Not from gaining things, but it's the happiness of so much stuff disappearing, and they can't touch you, they can't reach you. You're secluded from these things, apart from them, protected from the five senses. Viveka. And then the great stillness, samadhija, piti sukha, of stillness. That's one of the reasons why the immersion, or concentration, the piti sukha, born of concentration, oh my goodness, it doesn't cut it. Just stillness, nothing moves. Have you ever been into that, even in Bodhinyana monastery forest? Some mornings it's just so peaceful, nothing moves, it's still. Or you go into this hall here, this is a great haven and shrine to stillness. You come in here, nothing moves. It just stops your mind thinking, because the stillness outside is just, you can grab it, put it inside, sort of, that's only a metaphor, but it just calms you down and it gets really still. That is so peaceful, so happy, so joyful, blissful. And of course, when that gets really into your head and into a second jhana, so much stuff to say, you can't move. Your mind is frozen, beautifully still. And that tells you a lot. Great insight. When things stop, that's bliss, freedom. And things really start to stop more and more and more. They vanish. The guards are disappearing. And that just encourages you. How can things disappear like that? There couldn't have been anything there to begin with. Just this process. And this process, through lack of fuel, through the wanting, the craving, stopping. So does the process. When the fire, a wood fire or a grass fire in the Agi Vachakota Sutta, when it burns out of fuel, there's no fuel left. Where does the fire go? That does not apply. The fire is just nibbana. It disappeared. You haven't attained anything. At last, your five khandhas have stopped without remainder. And no more khandhas, no more sense bases can arise anywhere, in any way, in any place. And I always thank Ajahn Brahm for that quote from the Salayatana Samyutta, the most clearest place which says what happens for one who is parinibbānat. Isn't that cool? Nothing is better than existence. Okay, I think I've done enough for tonight. Sadhu, sadhu, I thought instead of doing Anudharma, you'd always say, and Avadakatang sadhu karang aso. Ahang